أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين وباعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على خاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين الرسول المؤيد والنبي الممجد المصطفى الأمجد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، لا سيما على الإمام المنتظر وحجة الله الثاني عشر ابن العسكري المنتظر، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فإن الله الصادق العليم قال في كتابه الكريم القرآن الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حتى إذا جاء أحدهم الموت قال رب ارجعوني لعلي أعمل صالحا فيما تركت، كلا إنها كلمة هو قائلها ومن ورائهم برزخ إلى يوم يبعثون. صلوات. Continuing with our discussion of the previous nights, and in trying to understand before we actually enter into the discussion of Barzakh and the various stages associated with it. Last night we saw how man, when he's being taken to the grave, or when he's about to have his soul seized by the Malakul Maut, starts seeking assistance because he finds himself completely helpless at that point of time. At that point of time, there is nobody to help him, there is nobody to assist him. And so he, like a person who's drowning, tries to seek and look for every straw that can support him. And while we discuss these things, we need to realize one thing, and we need to understand one thing, that these things that are talked about, they have a value. There's a reality attached to it. And let us not be under a misconception that these things are probably stories, or these things are something that could be a figment of a person's imagination, something that has been cooked up. I will give you an example, and let me give you a certain explanation before we can move further. Because as you see, we've been moving out on a very systematic level with a particular purpose to achieve. And as I had mentioned, from tomorrow onwards, we will go into the actual discussion of what Barzakh is and how it starts off. But till we do not talk about death and how things come about, we would not be able to appreciate what exactly happens down there when we go there. And in order to understand this, we need to understand the actual movement of man from the time his creation takes place into this world. The actual creation of man, if you look at the physical context in the light of Surah Al-Mu'minun, verse number 12 to 14, where God starts outlining the various physical processes of the creation of man. And it starts off with the fertilization and the conception that takes place within the womb of the mother. From that time onwards, man's journey towards the Akhirah begins. In that journey that man begins from the time he's conceived in the womb of the mother, the masir, the journey begins. But the amazing thing about this journey is that it's a one-way journey. There is no returning back in this journey. See, those who are into pharmacy, those who've studied medicine, we've studied biology when we were in school and colleges. See, the heart, you have the auricles and the ventricles. The flow of the heart always takes place from the auricles into the ventricles. It doesn't go back. And hence you find the dirty blood, the thick, the polluted blood coming into the auricle, goes into the ventricle, gets cleaned up, and then comes out. This is a one-way journey with a valve that does not allow a return back to the previous section. This journey of man is exactly this. That means from the time the conception takes place into the womb, into the womb of the mother, there is no other place that man can go except forward. So from the womb he comes out, the first conception takes place in the womb. That is his first world that he sees. From that he comes out into the world. That is the second world that he sees. From there he goes by means of death into the barzakh. That is the third world that he sees. From there he goes into the Qiyamah, the fourth world, which is the final world that he will go into. And if you've been understanding or recollecting the first ayah that I recited, which talks about barzakh, the verse says this, that حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَ أَحَدُهُمُ الْمَوْتِ, that whenever death comes to a person, whenever death will come to a person, حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَ أَحَدُهُمُ الْمَوْتِ, when these individuals who are opposing you, when these individuals are contesting you about the haqqaniyat of Islam, when death will come to them, tell them this is what is going to happen. You right now may contest, you right now may oppose me, but when actual death comes, حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءَ أَحَدُهُمُ الْمَوْتِ قَالَ, when he will see death, he will plead, he will beseech, he will beg to us, رَبِّ ارْجِعُونِي, send me back to this world, حَتَّى أَعْمَلُ صَالِحًا فِي مَا تَرَكْتُ, this world that I'm about to leave, send me back. Don't take me forward. I promise you that once you send me back, I will do good things into this world that I'm leaving. As he says this, God cuts off the ayah. Right now, God is narrating what this man would say. What not this man, every man would say. Send me back, send me back. At that point of time, God cuts his words and then puts his own words. Kalla, never. This is not going to happen. Kalla innaha kalimatun huwa qailuha. These are the words that he himself is saying. It will never work out. This is his desire. This is his umniya. This is his khwahish. But every khwahish doesn't have to be fulfilled. This is his desire to go back into the world. It will never take place. Kalla, never. This is never going to happen. Why? وَمِن وَرَائِهِمْ بَرْزَخٌ إِلَى يَوْمِ يُبْعَثُونَ. Because behind them there is a barrier that will never allow them to go back. They always have to keep going in front up to the day of judgment. Now this entire masir, this entire journey from the womb of the mother into the world, and from the world into barzakh, and from barzakh onto the day of judgment. Each of these four stages, each of these four realms, each of these four worlds have three barriers between them. And these three barriers then prove to be the most difficult portions of a person's life. The reason is this, that when man is conceived, he is in the state of in the womb of the mother. Let it not be a misconception into the minds of the people that when a child is into the womb of the mother, he doesn't understand, he doesn't comprehend, he doesn't know what is happening. This child in the womb knows exactly what is happening. But that's a different story. That's a different context that we need to discuss, not now, but some other time. But this child in the womb of the mother is extremely understanding, it's extremely comprehending what is happening. When this child in that constrained wombs, which the Quran says, fi dhulumatin thalath, under 3 dark curtains of the womb, this child is placed. Now, as soon as he's born, he comes into a world that is absolutely fantastic. They're a constrained world, they're a very dark world, they're a very limited world with limited movement, limited space, limited facilities. All of a sudden, this person now comes out into the world that is expansive, that is massive. It's an amazing experience. We may feel this child doesn't realize it, but the child feels it, and I will tell you why he feels it, how it is proved, it is felt it in the Quran, from the Hadith. When this person now is living in the world like you and me, we see all these things happening. We see this world. We've realized, we've got accustomed to it. From the time that we have been born, now we've grown up 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 70 years, 80 years. We've seen this world. Now, as soon as we die, we move into a different world. Just as the comparison of the previous world, that was the womb, in comparison to the next world, which is the dunya, is an extremely restricted and constrained environment. Similarly, this world, in comparison to the next realm, is a constrained environment, because the moment you step into that world, it is an expansive context that you're looking at. Just as from the womb, a constrained limitation, you come into this world, a massive change. Similarly, from this world into barzakh, a massive change. From barzakh into the akhirat, massive change. And this is the context, this is the uniformity of the creation of God. It's not just got to do with our existence. In the entire world of existence, the entire movement of creation takes place in this manner. The first realm is a constrained realm. The next realm becomes an expansive one. The third one becomes more expansive, and so on and so forth. So I will give you an example. You keep hearing in the du'as, in the Quran, samawatu sab'a, wal araduna sab'a, that there are 7 layers of earth and there are 7 skies. More than the earth, the 7 skies are referred. Whether it is in the Quran, whether it is in the du'as, whether it is in the ziyarat, you keep hearing samawat as-sab'a, the 7 skies, the 7 skies. Let me give you an example to make you understand how a subsequent world is far more expansive than the previous world. Look at this example. It's a tradition from the Ma'asumin. These 7 skies, somebody comes to the Masoom and says, Quran talks about as-samawatu sab'a, talks about the 7 skies. What are these 7 skies? Is it referring to these skies that we see over here? So the Imam says, no, you're making a mistake. These 7 skies that you're talking about, all these things that you see, all the stars that you see, the sun that you see, the moon that you see, the comets that pass, the asteroids as we know, the galaxies as we know, the various solar systems that we know, the infinite universe as in our view, billions and billions of stars that man cannot count and enumerate and enlist. All of these, the Imam says, all of these constitute the first sky. All of these constitute the first sky. Let it not be mistaken, the moment you cross the atmosphere, the stratosphere, the nanosphere of the earth, and you move into space where there is no light, no gravity, it doesn't mean you moved into the second sky. That is still part of the first sky. 30 years for Voyager to move from here into the periphery of the solar system, that is still the first sky. That Voyager keeps going for 100,000 years. Wherever it goes, that will still be the first sky. Sawa? Subhanallah now. Subhanallah is now. The riwayat say, all this that we've got is the first sky. So the Rawi asks the Imam, he's saying then, if this is the first sky, what is there in the second sky? So Imam says, I will not tell you what is there in the second sky. You will not be able to comprehend. This comprehension is an amazing thing, huh? Till you don't experience something, you cannot understand what it is. You may hear it, you will not understand it. I'll give you an example. If there's a child in the womb of the mother, and assuming that now we don't understand, but it is able to understand. You say, there is something that we have in the Indian subcontinent called biryani. Food we like, right? So give example of food. There's something called biryani, there is something called ramakda. You know ramakda? Gosh, no tukdo. In a ramakdo ke bhai, toys. वो जो बोटी होती है, it's something very nice, it's so tasty, beautiful. You have various biryani, you have Lucknow ki biryani, you have Karachi biryani, you got Hyderabad. That person would keep hearing it, but will never understand what it means. Till he comes into this world, the mother says, this is Lucknow ki biryani. He tastes it, he will realize, oh, this is what Lucknow ki biryani means. Till you don't experience it, you will not understand what it is. Same thing with relation to us. All the things that we will hear about what happens in the grave, what happens, and you will hear quite a lot. The trailer has ended. Now we're slowly moving into our real discussion. All that we see, we hear, we will only hear it. It is only when you see what happens and experience it that you will realize what God is saying. This is called Ainul Yaqeen and Haqqul Yaqeen. But let's go to that later. This Ravi says, can you tell me what is there into the second skies? This first sky is all this that you say. What is there in the second sky? Imam says, you will not understand if I tell you what is in the second sky. But let me give you a proportionate ratio and explanation. He says, the things that you see in this universe, you know, the stars, the satellites, the constellations. We don't want to repeat all these things that you see in this universe. He's saying, yes. Now, constellations, we know. In those days, it was stars, the sun, the moon, the asteroids, the comets, the shooting stars. He's saying all this thing that you see in this universe, if I were to compare this of this dunya to the existences and the creation of God into the second sky, if I were to give you a proportionate explanation, it would be like a ring poured into the ocean. That means the contents of the second sky vis-a-vis the contents of this first sky is like the contents of a ring placed into an ocean. That means the eventualities, the creation, the makhluqat and everything that God has got in the second sky in comparison to what is there in this world is a comparison of a ring to an ocean. So now the Ravi says, Khub, then what is there between the second and the third? If the first and the second is so vast, what is there between the second and the third? He says the relation between the second and the third is exactly the same. A ring of second sky to the ocean of the third sky. And he says, but does it keep going? He says it keeps on going. Every previous one in composition, in vastness, in superiority, in the ta'dad and the numbers of the makhluqat are exactly like a ring to an ocean. You start off from the first to the second, a ring to an ocean. Second to the third, a ring to an ocean. Third to the fourth, sixth to the seventh, ring to the ocean. This is what we say, Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. This is Subhanallah. Well, this was just a digression. Let's come back. When we look at these movements, we find that those bottlenecks, when a person is coming from a constrained environment into this world, that bottleneck. Then from this world to Barzakh, that bottleneck. From Barzakh to Akhirat, that bottleneck. Because now man is moving from a realm that is like a ring, compared to an ocean, it's an amazing experience. Amazing in the sense, not something fantastic, not something to be very looking forward to if you're not a good man, but very, very difficult. And this is the reason that you've got the tradition from the 8th Imam, Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salatu wassalam. The 8th Imam says, there are 3 occasions which are extremely difficult for men. And this is exactly what he mentions. It says 3 occasions extremely frightening, extremely excruciating, extremely painful, extremely fear-inducing. The time when he comes from the womb of the mother into the world, an entirely different environment. From the world that he goes up to death and into Barzakh, entirely different setup, an entirely new setup. And then from death, when in Barzakh, when he comes, when he's asked, Qum, stand up, the order of God comes. And he now gets up from the grave. He gets up from the grave, an entirely different thing. This is exactly what the Surah Hajj says. Ya ayyuhan nas ittaqu rabbakum inna zalzalata as-sa'ati shay'un 'azim. Oh, people fear that God, because that zalzala that will take place, shay'un 'azim, individuals who will be pregnant will miscarry their children, and ladies who are feeding the children will leave their children. وَتَرَى النَّاسَ سُكَارَى, and you will see people running helter and skelter. وَتَرَى النَّاسَ سُكَارَى, you will see them as if they're intoxicated, as if they've consumed alcohol, as if they've consumed intoxicants, as if they don't know what is happening, losing all sense of time, place and occasion, running here, running there, as a drunken man runs. وَتَرَاهُمْ سُكَارَى, you will see them as if they are intoxicated. وَمَا هُمْ بِسُكَارَى, they are not intoxicated. وَلَكِنْ عَذَابَ اللَّهِ شَدِيدٌ, the punishment of God is shadid, makes people lose sense of time and place. This is what Imam keeps saying. Beware, beware. This is Quran I'm reciting. This is no hadith that you can contest me. You can't contest me on Quran. First verses of Surah Hajj. But that's again a different issue. We don't want to go into Qiyamah. Qiyamah is something else. We are right now into Barzakh. And so when these things take place, you find that even awliya and anbiya, when they're talking about these things, they bring this concept. Look, these are the bottlenecks. You need to be wary about these bottlenecks. These are excruciatingly testing moments. See, in the Quran, you have several occasions where Allah praises the prophets. Allah praises the prophet. He sent the prophet, Salamun ala Nuhin fil alameen, Salamun ala Ali Yasin, Salamun ala Ibrahim. Salam upon Ibrahim, salam upon Nuh, salam upon Fulan, salam upon Ali Yasin. But many times you see in the Quran the prophets praising their own selves. Quran says, Islam says, don't be arrogant. But Islam also says that if you've been graced by some ni'mat of God, talk. فَأَمَّا بِالنِّعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. If you've been graced by certain benefits by God, explain to the people, tell them. And so you find in numerous occasions Ali along talking about himself. You don't want to go to Nahjul Balagha right now. But you see Ali talking about himself. See, but why is Ali talking? Why he wants to praise and put his fadail before the others? See, it is important for others to know who I am. If I don't tell them who I am, how will they know? So he talks about, same thing happens in the Quran. Look up the incident of in Surah Maryam. Who? Hadrat Isa. You know that incident of Surah Maryam, right? Maryam goes out of the city. People look for her. Where is Maryam gone? Where is Maryam gone? After 3 days, Maryam comes back. After some days, we don't want to go into this discussion. After a few days, she comes into the city. Ooh, all of a sudden, a child in the hand. I said, Maryam, what is this? Your mother was never like this. Your father was a good man. You've suddenly come. No husband, no marriage, no nikah. Child comes. What happens? Saying, I cannot speak. I'm not supposed to speak. Points to the child. You want answers, this child will give. These people come back to her and tell her and say, Maryam, what are you talking? This child looks a few days old. Quran, how do we talk to a child who is in the cradle, who is in your hands, who can't speak? How do you expect us? At that time, Isa comes into speech. Surah Maryam. Inni Abdullah atani al-kitab وَجَعَلَنِي نَبِيًّا وَجَعَلَنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. He comes out and speaks. The child, 3 days, 4 days, few days old child. Saying, how do we talk to a child? How will a child talk? All of a sudden, Isa comes into speech. Inni Abdullah, I am the servant of Allah. Atani al-kitab, He has given me a sharia. Wa ja'alani nabiyya, He's made me a prophet. Wa ja'alani mubarakan aynama kunt, and He's made me a mubarak person, a person of blessings, a person of barakah, wherever I am. He goes on praising himself. Then in the end he goes, Wassalamu alayya yawma walid, and the peace of Allah be upon me on the day I was born. وَيَوْمَ أَمُوتُ, and the day when I will die. وَيَوْمَ أُبْعَثُ حَيًّا, and on the day when I will be raised up again. Again those three in bottlenecks. Keep saying salam of God upon me on the day I was born. Salam of God upon me on the day I will die. And salam of God upon me on the day when I will raise up. You see, all the time these bottlenecks keep coming. And this is one bottleneck that we need to talk about when we move from this world going into the qabr. And understand, these are things probably at times we just listen and let it go through. I talk about myself. I hear, I let it go through. It hardly has any impact on me. But when there are individuals who really have a ma'arifat of God, then it makes a massive impact. These things can just be said. Listen from here, go out, beautiful majlis, nice talk, nice oratory. We're not here for oratory power, We're not here to just listen to some Majlis and say, wow, what a beautiful Majlis and gone out. At times it doesn't affect me. But when it affects people, it affects people. Individuals who have that capacity, the way it affects them, listen. Surah Hud. Surah Hud is surah number 11 in the Quran. Surah Hud is revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jibril brings Surah Hud. Surah Hud is revealed. The Prophet hears it, recites it to the people. For the next few days, the Prophet is very fatigued. All of a sudden, he looks very old. Looks very tired, stressed, anxious, anxiety on his face. People say, Ya Rasulullah, what has happened to you? Look at your state. What is wrong with you? You look so old. So when you're overcome with stress, you become old, right? When you're overcome with stress, you become old. You feel old, you look old, a lot of tension, a lot of stress. He says, Shayyabatni Hud. The surah Hud has made me old. Now don't ask me कि भाई ये मौलाना ये सूरह हुद में क्या चीज़ें हैं, मुझे बताइए कि जो है रसूल खुद कहते हैं कि जो है सूरह हुद ने मुझे बुढ़ा कर दिया है, उसमें चीज़ें सुनिए, खुद पढ़ लीजिए, ये कुछ तो हो, फूड फॉर थॉट. सब हम बयान करेंगे तो फिर आप क्या करेंगे? आप भी तो जब पढ़िए. ऐसा तो नहीं है कि हम सबका मुंह खोल के सब चीज़ को भरें. काश कर सकते तो फिर जो है ये खवातीन जो बेपर्दा जो है वो ज़ैनब के नाम पर जो है वो मुहब्बीन ज़ैनब कहते हुए घूमती फिरते, कम से कम सर पे उनके चादर डाल देते, मगर नहीं, इम्कान नहीं. इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल. सो इट्स फूड फॉर थॉट. इसे शय्यबतनी हूद. Hud has made me old. A surah comes, ages the Holy Prophet. Go and read the contents of Surah Hud. But you find in numerous occasions when these verses would come down, Ali is listening, Fatima is listening, verses coming down about the adab of God, they start crying. Not just crying, there have been instances when Ali and Fatima in the house of the Holy Prophet, the Prophet comes, anxious, saying, Ya Rasulullah, what has happened? Fulan verse, certain verses have been revealed. What is it? He recites, Ali starts to weep. Fatima starts to weep. Riwayat say they weep, they faint. See these tears that we have? They have a lot of effect. These tears make we'll come to that right now. Listen to this. The impact that it has. We hear just goes through our ears. But when there are individuals, when the ground is firm, when the ground is fertile, you sow seeds, it takes root. People like me, you put anything hard, the heart is hard, it doesn't have any impact. But Fatima begins to cry. Achha, Fatima doesn't need to cry. Ali begins to cry. How much they cry, they faint. But this is what happens when the heart is fertile. The reality exists. The fifth Imam, Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wassalam, is narrating a tradition. Ajab tradition this is. And understand, because now we're slowly moving into those directions. Sitting with his companions. Now you will find, and this is from Usul al-Kafi, you have a lot of traditions, and I keep mentioning this in Peterborough, that the Imams have narrated a lot of waqiyat and instances from the tribes of the ancient communities, Bani Israel, Suhud, Saleh, the communities of such Anbiya, specifically from Bani Israel. And a lot of these instances, a lot of these waqiyat, a lot of these instances have been narrated by the Imams. One of them is exactly this. The fifth Imam sitting with his companions, the talk of death. The talk of death takes place. The talk of death taking place. As the death takes place, people ask him, discussion going on. He's saying, can you tell us what happens when a person dies? The Malakul Maut comes, what happens exactly? Now you see, these are numerous traditions. Fifth Imam starts talking. He says, now he's not talking about himself from himself. He says, Qala Rasulullah. So he's narrating a tradition from the Holy Prophet, the fifth Imam. The Sahaba is sitting next to him. He's saying, إِذَا حُمِلَ عَدُوُ اللَّهِ إِلَىٰ قَبْرِهِ. He's saying when an evil person, a disobedient person, a person who has not been following, who's been flouting the religion of God, who's flouting the rules of God, I will do whatever I want, mujhe jo karna hai, phir aakhir